Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Ellensburg, Washington. The local time is 1:42 p.m. on a beautiful Friday afternoon. It's in the high 30s, but the sun is strong. We'll probably lose the sun by the time we're done. But we have it now, and the front porch is perfect temperature. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today's show is on Plutons, and that's us right here on December 4th. You are welcome to come back Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time, and we will talk about Baja, BC. Today is kind of about Baja, BC too, so it's part one and part two this weekend. Let me grab a drink and we'll see how we're doing. How are we doing? How are we doing audio-wise? I'm mostly interested in that. Doing great. Thank you. 5x5. Hello, Kathy. Wonderful. Loud and clear. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't have my wireless microphone on today. I thought the last few shows I was kind of muzzled a little bit, or the sound wasn't quite as sharp as I wanted, and I thought, well, wait a minute, I used to do these live streams before I bought that wireless mic setup, and so I went back and looked at a couple shows last spring, and I thought the audio was louder or stronger than with the wireless mic. So, I mean, I'm going to give it a try today. Doing the Cozy Fort, I need to figure out a couple audio things there. But otherwise, a little bit more feedback from you, please. If you're feeling like the audio is nice and strong, and if it is, then I'll stop thinking about it. And we've had, I don't want to jinx it, but we've had good luck with the buffering and the streaming because I'm inside and I'm very close to the box. Okay, good. So where are you viewing from this afternoon or this evening or this morning if you're on the other side of the world, and we can proceed. Chicago, Illinois. Hello, Minnesota. Mike says it's much better today. I'm so pleased. Devin in the UK. Julie from Prosser in the house. Dayton, Ohio. Denver, Colorado. Crescent City, California, Houston, Texas. Geologically speaking, is from the Peninsula Ranges, batholith. We'll talk about that today, Todd. Thank you. We're going to share one of Todd's videos today. Looking forward to that. It ties in perfectly with what we're doing today. Las Vegas, David, Southern Utah, Melbourne, the Dutch Night Owl from the Netherlands, Taro from Finland, Ben's from the Netherlands. Great, wonderful. I'm starting a little early because I have a lot of boxes. Montreal, hello Natalie. Calgary, Alberta, Deep Purple, Modesto, California. Nova Scotia, Cranbrook, British Columbia. Vancouver, BC, hello Ron. Matt's in Vancouver, Washington. Squim, just plain old Seattle. Yeah, the audio and video is excellent. Wow, I really need to think about that. I guess I was so high on that wireless mic setup outdoors when it was windy. But I'm starting to think if I'm in the front porch, unless it's way super echoey. I've got both of these windows open. I got this side window open. I don't know. So nice. I might even open up I've got the front door open now. That might mean people will drop in to say hi. But anyway, wonderful. Got, I think, the best setup I can. As long as the temperature stays nice and warm, I'm going to be fine. Otherwise, I might close a couple windows as we go on if I get a little cold. Terrific. Time for some thank yous. I don't have a hot mic anymore. I can't do that. Hot mic. So I always feel compelled to say I'm embarrassed by all the presents. I'm also appreciative of all the presents. I'm certainly not asking for more presents. They are pouring in now. It's hard to keep up. So just you tuning in is wonderful. And that's all that I need from you. But for those that feel they really want to send something, I'm sharing with that, but I'm not, there's a lot. So, box from Wire Gold in Snohomish, Washington. Organic catnip flowers for Bijou. Very nice note, Wire Gold. Thank you. I hope Bijou enjoys the catnip. And then some absolutely beautiful samples from Highway 2 up by Stevens Pass. This was Mount Stewart contact zone. If I had more time, I'd share all this stuff with you. Nason Ridge along with the Mount Stewart tonalite. So Mr. Wire Gold or Miss Wire Gold went out and just did a bunch of collecting. Maybe you already had these from past times, or maybe was inspired. But I do want to show this one carefully. This is Nason Ridge Nice. It's a core from Mount Stewart batholith contact zone. I always wondered what is inside these tortured rocks, so I drilled and looked. So Wire Gold drilled into the Mount Stewart contact zone with the Nason Ridge, and I'll flip you around, why not? So we're in this very interesting boundary, but just the look at one of these cores. So Wire Gold knows what, I'll just say he knows what he's doing with some sort of gasoline-powered drill. And Merle Beck today, who's going to help us get introduced to Baja, BC, was doing the same kind of drilling. I'm not sure their cylinders were as big as this thing is, but beautiful job. Wire Gold from Snohomish, Washington. Thank you very much. Oh, Wire Gold's with us. Thank you, Wire Gold. Thank you for joining us live, and thank you for the samples. When I have a little bit more time, I will really enjoy looking at your notes carefully and looking at those samples. I'm going to keep this out for our PaleoMag discussion. 10 minutes, oh my God, 10 minutes? Just gotta go quick. It's from my neighbors, and I'm sorry, I don't think I've met. Have we met? They're in Ellensburg, and they live just a few blocks down, 5 blocks down the way. Andres and Shirley sent, didn't just drop them off, they sent them through the mail. Beautiful holiday cookies, Christmas cookies. So Corey has had her eye on these the whole week, and I said, you gotta wait. I gotta show them off first. So thank you, neighbors, and if we've met, I'm sorry, your name is just not ringing a bell. So please come on up and say hi sometime out in the front yard with our distance and everything. Happy holidays. Thank you. Larry from the Portland area, Lake Oswego. I don't know how you did it, but you figured out that our favorite pizza place in town is called Cornerstone Pizza Pie. I'm not asking for more, but Larry sent a gift card for Cornerstone. We're going to celebrate tonight for a number of things going on here. So we're going to use that gift card tonight, Larry. So thank you. Bonnie from Bellevue dropped by Vindman's Bakery and had a couple of sticky buns dropped off at the house, and Vindman's card as well. So thank you, Bonnie. And speaking of Vindman's, Jeff, you know I was kidding, right? I feel bad. But if you knew I was kidding and you just still wanted to do this, I got another one. This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Vindman's Bakery. You gotta love it. So Jeff, I don't know what to say. I don't want to drop this one. I don't want to screw this one up. Notice I'm holding on tight with two hands. But the bakery seems to be doing well. Seems to be going strong. A lot of local businesses not so lucky. So keep doing what you're doing, and maybe I've been able to help bring a couple of customers your way. So thank you very much. I really don't know if I want to screw this one up. Thanks. And Julie from Prosser, who continues to shower us with gifts, and I have to share with Liz, she's always careful to say that. Dear Nick, I'm getting lost in the alphabet, but one of the letters you mentioned, Plutons shooting through the exotic terrains like bullets. Sorry, Patrick. How about a new food prop? How about a medley from Chucker Cherries in Prosser instead of bullets for Patrick and Gracie? So I don't know if you're aware of these things called Chucker Cherries, but they're a personal favorite of mine. I eat too many of them, especially holiday time. And you're like, what's Julie talking about? Well, these things are chocolate-covered cherries. I don't know. I'm sure it's more than that, but it's a good idea. So I gave it the old college try, Julie, just a second ago to show a Pluton invading the fruitcake. Uh-oh, somebody's in there. Hey, you enjoying the... You're okay. You're all right. So somebody was outside, but then he wanted to take a look, and then he smelled a fruitcake, I guess, or he smelled the sticky buns from Bonnie. And so, are you going to go back outside on this beautiful afternoon, or are you going to stay in here because you're smelling more food? People seem to like seeing you. I know that's true. I almost want to flip them around and like zero in on your whiskers or something. Would you be up for that? Would you be up for that, to be flipped around? Yeah, what if I flip you around? What if I flip you around? Yeah. What if... No, that's not going to work. Bijou says hi. Where was I? And the final thank you, I got more in the basement. I'll save those for Sunday. Hi, Nick. Here are 3 turned pens. This is from Pat and Karen Miller. Remember, Pat made that, but they both made that beautiful piece with the miniature rock hammer inside of the wood columns. So here's Pat at it again from Yakima and Karen. 3 turned pens, 2 from Green Rocks, Soapstone. 1 pen is for you, 1 is for Chris Mattinson. He was our guest. a while back. And the third one is for Liz, turned from pink ivory wood, easily in the top 5 rarest woods used making things. I'll flip you around. I'll flip you around. So the light's a little wrong for you here, Pat, but I just want to showcase your amazing handmanship, artwork. All you craftspeople, I don't know how you do it. I won't even begin to know. I don't like the light. Let me come back around. So if the pink stuff, the pink ivory wood is easily very, very rare, then I have to show that. That's Liz's. Oh, I should get it out, huh, Pat? Oh my God, this is amazing. I will flip you around even though the light's wrong. So we have our share of beautiful handcrafted pens now for sure, but Liz will enjoy this. We're still old enough to use pens and pencils and paper and everything else. So thank you, Pat and Karen Miller from Yakima, and you included a business card, possibly for me to share with everybody. Here's Pat and Karen, and here is their thank you. Okay, I got 2 minutes according to my watch. Can you give me 2 minutes to get my head together? Thank you for joining us today. I'm sorry, sir, you cannot have those. There's a long way. You're going to get sick if you eat those. You're just going to have to hang out here. You're just going to have to hang out. Oh, I forgot to show, hang on, I forgot to show, so Julian Prosser gave the Chucker cherry, and you're like, I don't see it. This is fruitcake from Dareth. I don't see the Chucker cherry. Oh, yeah. The Pluton. Trying to be positive, trying to be mature about this. This is take 2. We just did a bunch of thank yous. It's the holiday time. Everything was going very well here in the front porch. It's a beautiful afternoon, and as soon as I was ready to start, the thing blorped and went away, and I tried everything. I turned the phone off. I went back, turned it back on multiple times. Everybody was still in the live chat. And I said, we're going to have to start a new stream. We've done this a couple times before, so it doesn't faze me quite as much as it did before. But if you're watching this in replay form, and this is the beginning of this Pluton show, you're going to have to wait just a couple minutes, because I want everybody to, from the old stream, to find us on the new stream. So the local time is 2:08, and we will begin this program on Plutons at 2:15, and just keep our fingers crossed that we won't have another problem. 2:15 will be the top of the program, mere 7 minutes from now. So hopefully that will give us enough time to gather people. So thank you. I see we have 138, 140, 150 coming over now. Would you mind a couple of you going back to the old stream and helping people find us if that's possible? And wow, thank you. This is a program on Plutons. We will begin momentarily at 2:15 local time, 7 minutes from now. You are welcome to come back. Sunday morning, 9 a.m., Baja, BC. Actually, these two shows kind of work together. So this is kind of, I'm not sure how much we'll get into it with Baja, BC, but we'll introduce Baja, BC to those that don't know about it before we quit today. If we are allowed to continue here. My goodness. So I think in the 5 minutes that I have, I want to do a couple of quick thank yous that I just did before, but I want to just share that beautiful work. So thank you to Pat and Karen Miller in Yakima, who sent these beautiful handcrafted pens made out of greenstone. One of these is for Chris Mattinson, the professor who was in my backyard a few weekends ago. A pink one is for Liz. I'm going quickly because I already did this 15 minutes worth. This is a brand new fruitcake from Vinman's Bakery. You've got to love it in downtown Ellensburg. Jeff, I didn't really need another one. I was kind of half kidding, but now that you've made it, a custom-made fruitcake number 2 for me. This one's a little different. I almost don't want to do anything to it. It's so perfect, but I don't know. Maybe Sunday we'll have a slice together and I'll give some thought on how to do that. But thank you, Jeff. I thanked Bonnie from Bellevue for the wonderful gift card to Vinman's Bakery. I thanked Julie from Prosser for these Chucker cherries to be used as props for Plutons in the fruitcake. In fact, I think I was in mid-bite of a Chucker cherry acting as a Pluton. My neighbors down the street, thank you. Andres and Shirley, thank you for the wonderful Christmas cookies. Holiday cookies. I really got to stay away from cookies like that. I don't want to balloon back up. Thank you to Larry and Lake Oswego for the beautiful gift card from Cornerstone Pizza in Ellensburg. We will use your gift card tonight. We're celebrating a few things here in the house. And from Wire Gold, I know that you saw in the previous live stream, but I want to thank Wire Gold for his beautiful samples. Wire Gold lives in Snohomish, and he's been collecting for more than 20 years, and he has some beautiful Mount Stewart batholith samples and some other things as well. That was rushed and quick, but hey, I hope you can understand. Let me get my laptop reconnected. We have more than 400 that have made the switch. That old stream, I guess, is going away. Such a shame, but yep. There's one person still at the old stream. So 400 people jumped ship to the new stream. So I'm grateful. 440. I don't know. If it's on my end, I guess I gotta. If I do a lot more live streaming in 2021, I guess I need a new system. I guess I need to be hardwired and everything else. And a bunch of you have been very kind with your advice, but if it's not me and it's YouTube, then I don't feel so bad, and it's just kind of like whatever. It's pure magic that I can even do this. But regardless of how much planning and rehearsal and everything else, getting everything just right and turning stuff off, turning it back on, still have major problems. So my watch says 2:14. Could you give me 1 minute, please, to get my heart rate down just a little bit and just to think about the topic today? And we shall begin. More than 500 now. That's good. Okay, so here's to you for working hard on your end to find this new stream, and let's pray to whoever needs to be prayed to make sure that this stream doesn't go away here. Thank you. We'll start in 1 minute. Well, a pleasant good afternoon to you all. Welcome and thank you for joining us here in the front porch on a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Ellensburg, Washington. We still don't have snow on the ground here in town. We do have up on the ridges, and we continue with our exotic terrain series both this afternoon and Sunday morning. It's Baja BC weekend, and we've been waiting a long time to deal with this. I've been teasing Baja BC throughout the fall when we started this series. And I'd like to start by reminding you of the two main reasons that I've been doing this live stream series on exotic terrains A to Z. Main reason number one is that every morning, and I'm not exaggerating, every morning when I walk down the stairs heading towards the north from my neighborhood, I see the Stewart Range, if the clouds allow. And I always have conflicting feelings. This is 30 years now of conflicting feelings. Part of me goes, God, that is a beautiful mountain range, and I'm so lucky to live in a valley that has that view every morning. The Stewart Range and Mount Stewart to the north of town. A beautiful, jagged, Teton-like skyline. It's amazing. But my other thought, almost simultaneously, is I still haven't sat down and learned the exotic terrains of northern Washington, of the North Cascades. And beyond Mount Stewart, I'm pointing to the north now, beyond Mount Stewart is this complicated fruitcake of exotic terrains, and I never have sat down to figure it all out. And I haven't because I know it's not going to take me just a couple of hours to figure it out. I need to have a sustained effort to try to learn even the basics about all the exotic terrains that are up in the Pacific Northwest's North Cascades, exotic terrain country, the crystalline core, etc. Well, I feel very good. I feel very good. For the first time, after 30 years of living here and teaching here as a geology instructor, I know the basics now. And you would have thought that I'd have this long ago, but I didn't, and I do now. The other reason I've done this exotic terrain series this fall is because I'm part of a collaboration with 3 research scientists who are going to spend the next few years with their graduate students from Purdue University, Nevada, Reno, and San Jose State. And those professors are Michael Eddy, Stacia Gordon, and Bob Miller. They're going to be working in this area. And Mike in particular is going to work with a lot of Plutons. And so this topic this weekend, we've only really looked at one Pluton so far, right? That's the Mount Stewart Pluton, the Mount Stewart batholith. But this area is just absolutely riddled with Plutons, and it was my choice for this A to Z series to assemble the fruitcake the best we could. up in Alaska, Yukon, British Columbia, northern Washington, fruitcake, exotic terrains, Stickinia, Quinelli, everything else, right? And we've ignored the Plutons. We've ignored the Plutons. And I thought that was a smart move, and I still do think it was a smart move. I don't see how we can study the fruitcake if there's all this stuff interrupting it. But here we are towards the end of the alphabet, and we are finally ready to deal with the complication because we've made the fruitcake. I mean, I tried to disassemble it and then put it back together and restore the fruitcake last time. Didn't work so well, if you recall. But if we're having Plutons invade the fruitcake, we got to have the fruitcake to start with, don't we? And we have done that by now. We have assembled piece by piece, sometimes in groups, these complicated areas in northern Washington and crossing over into southern British Columbia. So what are the goals then today? One main goal is to realize that Mount Stewart Pluton, the Mount Stewart batholith, is just one of hundreds and hundreds of Plutons. And so I want to plug Mount Stewart, which we decided long ago was 96 to 91 million year old granitic material, Pluton. That's just one of hundreds and hundreds of Plutons of that same rough vintage. And I want to plug Mount Stewart into a more regional story and ask some significant questions that are still unresolved, but also share some exciting work that's been done over the last 20, 30 years that I find interesting, and hopefully you will too. Okay? He goes to the introductory folder. Let's see what's inside. Oh yeah, I'm getting nostalgic now, man. This is way back in September when I was outdoors. And we didn't have Plutons then. I didn't even know the details of these terrains back then. But we've done a fair amount learning each constituent within the fruitcake and putting them in at different times and realizing that there's an oceanic history for much of this. No Plutons here. Even here in the North Cascades, we've looked at this a number of times. I keep adding colors and different names and strike slip faults, the Straight Creek Fault and these other faults as well. And the Melange Belts was our most recent visit to the fruitcake. It's all assembled now. We're waiting for something next to happen. Recall, please, that the only Pluton that we looked at was the Mount Stewart batholith, and here it is offset. I've showed this to you more than once. Offset by the Straight Creek Fault, 100 miles of offset, a dextral strike slip fault with the western side of the fault moving north between 50 and 35 million years ago. Last time, if you recall, we're still just trying to get into it here. Last time we looked at one scientific paper by Sandra Wild and others, 2006, a 15-year-old paper. And the whole point of that session last time, called Restoring the Fruitcake, was to try to put the fruitcake back together as it was 100 million years ago by taking all of the strike slip faults that have been mapped over the last 100 years, most of them dextral, I might add, most of them right lateral, and restore each of those guys. And our centerpiece was this map here, which I held as a freeze frame, so I won't do it again necessarily right now. But we realized that many of the northern Washington and even southern BC terrains were 100 million years ago, according to that paper, in southern Oregon, in northern California. And we took things that are in today's northern Washington and restored them 100 million years ago using known strike slip faults. And we got a bunch of that stuff down and connected it with places in northern California. And maybe you felt like, hey, that's pretty significant. Like, wow, we moved things like 500 miles to the south or 300 miles to the south, or in the case of Wrangellia, maybe more than 500 miles to the south. Feeling pretty good about ourselves. Well, today we're going to move things more than that. This is the minimum amount of translation that if you are talking about North Cascades terrains, and the main point from last time was you have to have hundreds of miles of northward translation of a bunch of these terrains just based on the known strike slip faults that we have in the North Cascades and into BC. Case closed, no discussion. You just can't have zero northward translation. We already made that point in the last session. You need it? Maybe you need it. So we said today there's this Columbia embayment that separates these terrains in northern Washington with some of the known terrains in southern Oregon, let's say. But if we go back in time, again, this is last show, we move the northern guys back to where they came from, and we can connect them up with exotic terrains down in southern Oregon, northern California. Okay, that's where we left things. We had a functional live stream then. Do we still? I guess we do. We have more than 600 now. That's good. I'm done with the introduction. And notice we didn't talk about Plutons even last time because we don't know any Plutons. Well, let's change that. Let's go to folder 1, which is new stuff. This isn't folder 1. But I'm reminding, from day one, we reminded ourselves that most of our drama was going to happen between 250 million years. So right off the bat, I want to establish that there are plenty of Plutons in the Pacific Northwest that are younger than 50. We don't care about them today. If I do a live stream series on the most recent 50 million years in 2021, we will be very interested in those Plutons. But we're not interested today. We are interested in the Plutons that hover around 100 million years ago. Daddy's freelancing already. Daddy's freelancing already. You notice I don't have my wireless microphone. I decided maybe I have a stronger sound and a stronger voice just using the mic on the camera. We'll see. So I get confused with early, mid, and late Jurassic, and so I always have to refer to my little envelope. And as we've done a number of sessions now, and we will again today, the main interest is, quote unquote, the main event, 100 million years ago, the mid-Cretaceous. If you get into this exotic terrain reading or learning or whatever in different forms, that phrase mid-Cretaceous keeps coming up. Well, they're basically talking about 100 million years ago. And I did a couple of Zoom calls on Wednesday, not something I normally do, but I wanted to visit for this show. I wanted to visit with Basil Tekoff back in Madison, Wisconsin, and John Garver, who teaches at Union College. They've both had long careers involved in these terrains. And they both reinforced. They'd seen a little bit of our stuff, not a whole lot. That's fine. They're very busy. So I don't think they realized how hard I was hitting the 100 million year old event. But Basil in particular is like saying, I think the future work is going to continue to have people looking very carefully at this 100 million year, whatever happened at that time. So our first major message is we want Plutons on either side, age-wise, of the mid-Cretaceous. 20 million years younger, 20 million years older. So if you're curious what Pluton, first of all, if you're curious what a Pluton is, I guess we got work to do. But if you feel comfortable with what a Pluton is, or a bunch of Plutons together, a batholith, we want to look at batholiths or Plutons that are between 120 and 80 million years-ish. Okay? That's our topic. So now I'm ready to go to folder number 1. And I've showed you this before. This is a map from Bob Hildebrand, and I'll be talking a fair amount about Bob today. Bob has been incredibly prolific in the last 15 years. And one of the most impressive things that he does is create these absolutely stunning looking maps. I don't know how he does it. And I don't know how much time goes into every one of these maps. But this map should look semi-familiar to you. Plutons, different ages, We're mostly interested today in, now we're going to have a different color scheme, of course. I have to create my own color scheme, some sort of egotistical person, I don't know. You know, everybody has a different color scheme. But notice we do have, there's Mount Stewart and the Mount Stewart Pluton, which ranges in age from 96 to 91 million years old. You got your bearing? Ellensburg, Washington's down here. This is looking familiar, isn't it? It's kind of familiar. Here's the stuff that went down the geologic elevator and came back up. That's Stacia Gordon country. The Methow, we had all that sediment coming in. We'll come back to the Methow on Sunday morning. So there's plenty of Plutons here just in northern Washington, just in the North Cascades. But I'm saying we don't care about most of them. We don't care about these, or these, or these, I guess, that are undated. We just want those Plutons mid-Cretaceous-ish, 120 to 80. So right off the bat, you can see just in northern Washington, Mount Stewart did not act alone, was not an invasion by itself. Speaking of which, I got an email from Kyle. Kyle, I don't know where you live, but thank you for this. Kyle kind of played off the idea. I kept saying these Plutons are eating up from below. They're invading the crust from below. So here's Kyle. Attention, Earth people. This is an invasion of the Plutons. Terrains versus invasive basalts. Cascades, British Columbia, Baja. Featuring Professor Nick Zentner with Bijou the cat. Oh, that's right. The old stream had Bijou the cat, and the new stream that I just started, because the old one. So Bijou's going to end up on the cutting room floor. That's too bad. Thank you, Kyle, for that. So you have seen this before, that I've already showed you that there's this incredible belt of plutonic material stretching from northern Washington. Mount Stewart's at the very southern tip of this thing. You're going to hear this a lot today. Coast Plutonic Complex. Up through western BC, crossing through the Yukon, getting up into Alaska. We really have three batholiths that we're featuring today, and this is one of them. The Coast Plutonic Complex of British Columbia. But we're just getting started here. Are we? Yeah, we are. This is not looking at Plutons, but it's trying to reinforce. I like it. It's from one of those Roadside of Southern British Columbia books. It kind of shows our area that we've been studying very carefully, the northern Cascades of Washington. We're just kind of showing that continues. Whoa. So plenty of the geology, including the Plutons, are going to continue across the border in a general way. So they're not showing our Straight Creek Fault, of course. But this is a regional story. You're kind of feeling that now, I think, from me. This is not an isolated event, Tiny Mount Stewart, the Tiny Mount Stewart Pluton. What do I want to do here? Hang on, I thought I had these organized. Yeah, I'll do this, and then I'll move on to the next little phase here. I think I've shown you this one too, but this is an even more complicated map where I took my colored pencils out and just showed Mount Stewart, all these guys. We know that they're not all the same age. We know that some of these Plutons are very young. Now, if you're guessing, you're new to us, you're not sure what a Pluton is, think a blob of magma in the subsurface. Liquid magma, a big pool of it. Cartoonishly, just a big room of orange liquid magma, okay? And if we cool that off, we're going to form a plutonic igneous rock. So it was liquid, it's not plutonic rock yet, it's just magma. But if we cool that off, we cool that magma chamber off in the dark and we turn it to stone, it becomes a Pluton. And if there's a lot of these Plutons, dozens and dozens of them kind of together, we call that a batholith. So batholith is more of kind of a size term, a quantity term. A whole bunch of individual Plutons together is a batholith. Okay, I want to cut to something quickly. I mentioned those 3 Plutons. Where are they? Pluton, if the drinking word is Pluton, you're screwed, by the way. So, a bunch of Plutons together, batholith. Here are the 3 batholiths to study today. Let me slow down and give you a chance. We just looked at this one a little bit. Here's the Straight Creek Fault. This is obviously me drawing on some sort of whatever. So we have our offset, our 100 miles offset of, this is pretty much the crystalline core. So another major message. Our crystalline core, which had the stuff that was dropped more than 20 miles into the crust and then brought back up, there's so much plutonic material there that we're lumping that in with this massive Coast Plutonic Complex, the CPC. And again, Mount Stewart is just the southernmost little dot. I mean, it barely even shows up on this map. So maybe that's new to you, that Mount Stewart is not an isolated thing. It's part of this incredible welt, or family of plutons known as the Coast Plutonic Complex, mostly in Canada, in British Columbia. And then further south, we have an American batholith and we have a Mexican batholith. So we got Canada, US, and Mexico. I promised we were going to be far-reaching at some point. Well, here we are. So at least in the US, in geology, most people know about the Sierra Nevada batholith, making up much of eastern California, and that's the same batholith that we have used in the past. Remember, we had a piercing point to measure the 300 miles of offset recently in the last police boy, ambulance boy. In the last 18 million years, we've had 300 miles of offset on the San Andreas Fault. But this is the Pluton that we're talking about today. That also is not alone. So this guy is a mid-Cretaceous batholith. You starting to see it? Major mid-Cretaceous batholith, major mid-Cretaceous batholith, and another one. The Peninsular Ranges batholith, which is mostly in Mexico, Baja California, Mexico. But there is some of the Peninsular Ranges batholith in SoCal, in Southern California, approaching Los Angeles. We're going to be comparing and contrasting between these 3 batholiths and somehow saying something significant about the American West. Okay, I'm really improvising here. I had a plan, but I'm junking it in real time. This, I forget where I got it, but is showing a little bit more Alaska down to central Mexico. Peninsular Ranges batholith, Sierra Nevada batholith. They're not labeling it, but here's our Coast Plutonic Complex. Now there's the Idaho batholith. We're going to ignore it today. There's some other batholiths. We're going to ignore them. They don't have the right age, or a couple other things, there's reason to ignore them. Okay, well, let's get to the improv then. Oh, I'll do it this way. So we now know where these 3 major batholiths are. We all know that they're generally mid-Cretaceous, and you know that's between 120 and 80 million years. Train boy. What are you imagining created all this magma? In the neighborhood of 100 million years ago, why do we have all this magma? Do you have a mechanism in mind? Now, you're a fan of geology, so you've done reading. You've taken geology classes, possibly. Is there a conventional answer to that? Is there a new answer to that? The answer is yes and yes. And this is going to sound familiar to the Karen Siglock show that we did a month ago. Here is the main mechanism that today, it's the majority opinion about at least the Sierra Nevada batholith, and for many, Also the view for these other two major batholiths as well in the mid-Cretaceous. You got it in mind? Maybe you've already typed it down. It's this. It's that sometime during the mid-Cretaceous, let's say, our window of time that we care about again today, 120 to 80, we had a major ocean plate in the Pacific Ocean. Most people call it the Farallon Plate, depending on what time you're talking about. And that big ocean plate is eastward subducting towards the east, diving underneath North America and diving to the east. And this is subduction, of course, the process of subduction. Almost everybody here knows what that is. It's taking one tectonic plate and sending it underneath another. Many view this as a pulling mechanism, that once you get this stuff down deep, then you're just pulling on the rest of this ocean plate. So instead of cramming the ocean plate underneath, you're kind of, once you get it underneath, you're pulling it and almost gravitationally pulling it. I don't know what I'm talking about now, by the way. But this is the general mechanism to create a bunch of plutonic material. And if you cool that off, it becomes plutons. And if there's a hell of a lot of it, sorry, Patrick, it becomes a batholith. This is what most people have in mind for the Sierra Nevada batholith. Here's another picture of the same thing. By the way, it's not just this subduction generated eastward subduction creating the batholith, the Sierra Nevada batholith in California. There's other features that go along with this as well. This is known as the California Triad. Three things together is telling us that we have eastward subduction. An accretionary wedge, which we've talked about before. I think I've shown you this cartoon a few times. A four-arc basin. This is the basin you cross before you get to the arc. Ha ha. Okay? So this is Geology 101 as it's been taught forever, including by moi. That's French. Do I need to show you this one? I showed you this, I don't know, last weekend? Just what I said, right? Eastward subduction, major plate, applicable to many batholiths or large plutons around the world. But are there other ways that Mother Nature creates plutons? Is it always a subduction story? To me, that's the first interesting question of today. Are we sure these guys are from subduction? And if we're sure they're from subduction, are they from eastward subduction, where we had ocean plate coming west to east and diving beneath? Now, I've already tipped my hand a little bit, haven't I? Especially recently, I keep saying if there's a bunch of strike-slip faults, that means we have oblique subduction. That means we have major times in our geologic past along the west coast of North America where we did not have an ocean plate coming head-on, but we had an oblique subduction. In some cases, an ocean plate heading true north. That's coming more Sunday than it is today. But let's just go ahead and go back to the basic question I'm asking right now. Why do we have incredible batholiths all about the same time along the west coast of North America? Is it simply an eastward subduction story? And oh, by the way, they're going to stop. At 80 million years ago, the Sierra Nevada batholith in particular, but others as well, they just stop. The plutons just stop. The magma hardens. And there's models like this one saying, well, we changed the angle of the subducting plate, and so we no longer have magmas here, we have them further east. That's never sat well with me, by the way, but we don't need to go there today. We're ignoring the Rocky Mountains altogether today. Okay, I think, now I'll finish out. I know the next major thing I want to do, but let's just finish out this little introductory folder. So here's one of our batholiths today, the Sierra Nevada. Here's just the northern tip in California of the Peninsula Ranges batholith. Then we got some kind of no man's land here in the Mojave that's kind of a puzzle for a number of reasons. Same kind of map There's our Sierra Nevada batholith that abruptly stopped because of strike slip faulting down in Southern California, much younger than our strike slip faulting, by the way. And then our peninsula ranges. I'm just trying to kind of just let this sink in a little bit with you. We have some video field reports today, one from Shirley in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe area, and she's not going to take us into the plutonic rock of the Sierra Nevada mountains, but she will give us a quick little tour of some stuff that's from older exotic terrain times. Quinellia, Cache Creek, remember, in the foothills. So I know you'll enjoy that from Shirley. And then I just grabbed this. This is also from Bob Hildebrand, just up in the Squamish area. So we're back up in British Columbia, just showing all the Plutons of various ages. You know, Bob's pretty famous for that kind of visual sense. He's so good visually. That's folder number 1. What's next? It's about to get wild. Are you ready? About to get wild. Are we doing okay, by the way, on this new stream? I keep seeing comments come by, so I assume we're functional, but I'd like to just take a second, if you don't mind. Okay, Todd's with us. Tom, John, Saber, Dale, Lars, Dan. I'm going to keep going until I see a female name. Mardine. Okay, good. Okay. There's more than one possibility for creating a lot of Pluton material. So let's open our mind up for just a second. We don't have to be aggressive. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to be, the old guard is they don't know what they're talking about. Us new guys, look at me, I'm not a new, look, us new guys have got these new ideas, you know. Now, we're not doing that. But let's just think worldwide of other places that were generating large volumes of magma. So we have talked about this to this point today, correct? And that's probably what you had in mind, I'm guessing, for our Plutons here in the American West. Now, you know the concept of a deep mantle plume and a geologic hotspot and a moving plate over the top. We're generating large volumes of magma in that situation. I'm not saying that's the story for these batholiths today, but just hang with me, please. And also in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean floor or the East Pacific Rise, we have the opposite. We don't have collision. We don't have one plate moving. We've got a divergence. We have two plates going away from each other, and we're generating large volumes of magma there. Of course, these are different chemistries. There's lots of differences between this, but I'm just trying to think very basically about how the world creates large volumes of magma. And so far in my teaching, I've presented this. In fact, pretty early in the quarter, I kind of do this with my students and say, here are the 3 ways that plate tectonics creates large volumes of magma. I've never done this. So this is brand new to me, and it's not particularly common for geologists to embrace the idea or even know about it. It's a pretty new idea, although I think it's been in the literature in minor amounts over the years. But it is a major Pluton generator, even a batholith generator, favored by one particular author over the last 15 years. Slab failure, Bob Hildebrand. So those two phrases need to go together for the rest of today. And this is not going to be a Bob Hildebrand festival for the rest of today or beyond. But I've seen enough of Bob Hildebrand's stuff talking about slab failure, and for the first, 4 or 5 times I sat down and reading this stuff, I'm like, I don't even know what slab failure, what does he mean? I don't even get it. Well, let me show you an animation that I've used for years, and I never really thought about slab failure before. I got to go find the other laptop. Hang on, would you? Don't walk into the corner. That would not be good. Let's split my head open. I'm on the old stream there. I'm not even going to go cozy fort. I think you can maybe see this with a little bit of reflection. And I've got this on a loop. This is probably Tanya Atwater. I'm not sure who made this thing. But Tanya Atwater made a lot of interesting animations out of Santa Barbara 20 years ago maybe. So I've used this for years talking about the creation of the Himalayas. And of course, this is on a loop. Of course, our eyes are drawn to these yellow things, and those are continents. And depending on how experienced you are with geology, you can recognize that this is India coming north and colliding with the soft underbelly of Asia and creating a continent versus continent collision, the Himalayas, or the Himalayas if you've been in school too long. And so this collision continues today, of course. There's absolutely tragic events involving earthquakes in many countries along this suture zone between these two continents. And I guess I've noticed that I don't think I want to pause this. Oh, maybe I should. Hang on, can I do this? Pause. Oh, shit. Sorry, Patrick, I can't pause it. I'm 58 years old. I can't pause this thing. So when we start this little animation, each time it loops, notice that there's an ocean basin. We're going to close an ocean basin. And just in the first little part, come on now, I got to be able to do this. Daddy can do this. So this is ocean floor that is subducting beneath Asia. And as this continent gets closer and closer to this continent, we are making this ocean basin get smaller and smaller, are we not? And this is a slab that's going all the way down to the lower mantle. We learned from Karin Siglock's lecture. But what I want you to notice, and it's going to happen so quickly, that's why I have it on a loop. Muffler boy. I want you to notice that as soon as we collide these two pieces of crust up here at the surface, I want you to notice that this slab is going to tear away. Maybe you already noticed it. We're going to break this slab that's in the subsurface, and we're going to tear it to the point where it breaks free. And the only thing that's not on this animation that we want to include here is that there's a stenosphere material. This is the model. This is the slab failure model. There's a stenosphere that's going to surge to the surface through that broken area. And whether it's eastward subduction or westward subduction, we're going to have this massive magma generator shortly after the main event. Are you ahead of me? You probably are. Can you play this thing? Because I can't. Slab failure right there. Did you see it? Let's wait for the next go around. It fails right there. The slab just failed. Did you see it? It detached. The ocean crust right after the collision detached, and a bunch, if we want to add to this animation, magma's right there. And magmas are going to come up and invade the hanging wall or the foot wall or the suture itself. But the concept that Bob Hildebrand is pushing, maybe too hard, I don't know, feels kind of desperate as far as the regularity and how everything is brought back to slab failure, but it's an interesting idea to me, and I want to entertain it in this series, especially if we're talking about westward subduction instead of eastward subduction. Those that are ahead of me are already seeing North America blindsiding a fixed insular terrain in the Pacific, and westward subduction as the ocean basin is closed, and magmas, I'm giving away the rest of the lecture, and magmas surging to the surface, including Mount Stewart, including the Coast Range Complex, Coast Plutonic Complex, I always struggle with that, including the Peninsula Range batholith, as a direct result of a almost a delayed thing. It's a 1-2 punch. Collide and then invade. Collide, break off, invade. Collide, break off, invade with magmas. Can you see it? You don't have to love it. I mean, you gotta love it. You don't have to love it. You can do what you want. But I'm interested in this idea. And I'll be very interested to see if this becomes an idea that is embraced by more than Bob. Now, what evidence do we have for that? Well, this guy, I mentioned he's incredibly prolific. That's an understatement. Here's a paper from 2013, Mesozoic Assembly of the North American Cordillera. It's more than 100 pages. It's a special paper, 495. And if you just type in roberthildebrand.com, I think, you can get to a publications page and you can just see all this without, I mean, I printed it all out. I didn't have a stapler big enough. I had to go 20 pages at a time. And he's got an equally impressive 2017 special paper. The tectonic setting and origin of the Cretaceous batholiths within the Northern American Cordillera. He teams up with Joseph Whalen. Special paper 532. I mean, this is like magnum opus, or whatever the phrase is. Part 1, part 2. He's got all sorts of other things. This is all just in the last decade. And what I am attracted to, of course, are the visuals. His maps are so great. I don't know enough geochemistry to understand his plots, but he approaches it with the way that I like to approach things, which is far-reaching. It's synthesizing a bunch of individual research camps and trying to put those things together in some sort of coherent picture. And from experience, I know that if you're not a specialist, if you're not in one deep research hole with 3 or 4 other close buddies, if you're not in the hole with them, then you're not really part of the club. So I don't know. I'm not sure what you're up to, but you're not in with us. So there's a lot of sociology among geologists, like most groups in the world. Doesn't have to be science. And so I think it's fair to say most don't really know what to do with Robert. They don't really know what to do with all of Bob's work. And as I ask around and talk to a variety of people, I don't think they've spent much time reading his stuff. I did talk to him for an hour on the phone once a couple of years ago, and that's one message I remember him saying. He says that people don't even really read my stuff. I mean, it's all there. Well, there's a lot there to absorb. And I've done my best this week to go through your stuff, Bob, if you eventually see this. And I want to pull out a couple of things that I'm excited by that are just data. One of the things he does now is make these beautiful maps, but he synthesizes a bunch of reports and comes up with basic observations on a regional scale, which that's really what I like. So let's leave the slab break off or the slab failure for a second. Please don't be fixated on that. Maybe you're interested in it, but let's not get fixated on it. Let's go back to just some data. Data that I haven't seen put together before quite like this. So again, this is Bob. Hildebrand, Robert S. Hildebrand. So hang on, Patrick. Ooh, I smell fruitcake. So what does Bob have for us as far as a little bit more detail about the plutonic rocks, the Plutons within these 3 major batholiths? Well, he has plenty. He's got a whole paper, a 50-page paper, just on the Peninsula Ranges batholith. But I found this last night, and I found it very interesting, and then I slept on it, and then I sketched these out about noon today. So let me slow down for you. So here's 2 of the 3 bathylists that we're discussing today, correct? I'm not showing you British Columbia yet. And I didn't realize this, maybe you did, that in both of these bathylists, there's kind of a split personality. So I just grabbed 2 random colors. Sorry, Patrick, I didn't, I don't have declarations for these colors. I forget what these are. I think this is hot pink, actually. But can you see, these are numbers in millions of years. This is the granitic stuff now, the plutonic rock in these 2 bathylists. And according to Bob's work, again, he's just taking all this work by others and kind of putting it together, kind of like I do. I didn't realize that the western half of these 2 bathylists have rocks that are older than 100 million years old. And the rocks in the eastern half of both of these bathylists have rocks that are slightly younger than 100 million. And that, depending on who you talk to, there's a racing stripe right down the middle of both of these bathylists that are at about 100 million years. Now, whether that's, I don't think that's plutonic material that's 100 million years. I think that's evidence of collision. Whether that's Darrell Cowan's pizza boxes and naps on thrust faults, whether that's something else structurally, whether that's deformed metamorphic rock, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. But I've never seen this before, that there's a pretty good match with the split personality of the Sierra Nevada batholith and the split personality of the Peninsula Ranges batholith. Like they're the same thing. Like from this presentation, it looks like these 2 guys were connected maybe at one time. I'm not saying that right now, but I'm just showing you some startling similarities between these 2 bathylists. You okay? Now I got the same color scheme from our 3rd guy. Looks a lot bigger because I used a different scale. Let's go up to British Columbia. Mount Stewart is down here. There's my front porch. Washington, British Columbia, Vancouver Island, that's Rangalia, that's not part of this story. But here's this, hang on. I feel I need to orient you. So we were just looking here, correct? Now we're going way up here, right? And apparently, running right through the middle of the Coast Plutonic Complex is also a racing stripe. Also, this I'm less certain on now from just quickly going through Bob's stuff last night. Is this also 100 million years? I'm not sure. But notice that we don't have the older stuff in the west and the younger stuff in the east here. We don't have that, what we had in SoCal or Central California. I also don't really know, and you see my big question mark here, I don't think Bob did this actually, Bob Hildebrand. I don't think he swung this. In fact, I'm sure he didn't, into northern Washington, but I'm wondering if we've done so much restoring of the Straight Creek Fault in past episodes, if this is truly a split personality thing in the Coast Range, in the Coast Plutonic Complex, can we follow it across the Straight Creek? There's question marks all through here. I have way more question marks about the bedrock plutonic rock in the Coast Plutonic Complex than I do with these 2 guys here. But that was new to me and maybe new to you. Let's go back to these 2 guys that match beautifully, according to Hildebrand and others. I got to say it one more time. Hildebrand does what I like to do. He takes hundreds of individual scientific papers. He kind of works through each of them, tries to grab a few major concepts or a few major dates, and maybe he sees those dates change as the technology gets better. But he has a way to synthesize things where most of us just get overwhelmed. We just read everything in equal weight and we can't pull back and see a bigger story. That's what Hildebrand is doing, and I like that part of what he's doing. Now, I'm a little confused by people's reaction to him. I just saw uppercase. It's more technical, Nick. If you mean it's more complicated, of course it is. Okay, let's not. That pushes a button with me, by the way. You know, personally, that pushes a button. You didn't mean it that way, probably, but what I do is trying to do this synthesizing thing as well. And when somebody comes back and says, well, it's way more complicated than that. What I hear when you say that to me is, you're not as smart as I am. I know all the details that you obviously don't get. And the reason that's a frustration to me, you're probably smarter than I am, so that's no problem. But the problem I get into, I shouldn't go in this tangent. The problem I get into is that nobody appreciates science because it's all too complicated for a regular person to understand. And then before you know it, we got our president drinking Clorox on national television because nobody has any idea what's going on in science because it's so complicated. All right, that's enough of that. Back to Hildebrand. So he's finding a couple other interesting parallels on opposite sides. So we're back to my little thing here, both in the Sierras and the Peninsula Ranges batholith. There's a change in silica content from west to east. Is it truly this major jump from west to east? According to him it is. I don't know if it truly is or not. And now that I say that, I think he's showing some of the younger Plutons, at least in the Sierras, are eating into this line and invading a little bit more here. But there's this interesting change in general from west to east, from mafic or darker colored granites to lighter colored granites. And sure enough, they're invading a bunch of the friends that we had them invading in the North Cascades. These are familiar rocks to us, the green schists and the amphibolites and the migmatites. That's the country rock with many of these places. So it's always tough to go a state away or a country away and make convincing cases that you're looking at the same stuff. But this weekend, we're doing some of that. And that's why this continues to be a controversy, quote unquote. Because it's tough to find the smoking gun to convince people, everybody, that you're looking at the same stuff a long way away. I'm just throwing out ideas. So if we're back to our eastward subduction, you can get the sense of, look at all these Plutons. Each of these little guys, each of these little chucker cherries, Julie, is a Pluton, but their family together, muffler man, the family together is a batholith and another batholith, etc. So can you do that with the changing angle of the Farallon plate? Or do you remember what Hildebrand likes? Hildebrand likes slab failure for each of these guys with westward subduction of the ocean floor beneath the insular terrain. We're not going to hit that hard today. We might in show Z. But just letting you know that the old idea is this is Farallon plate eastward subduction. The new idea from Hildebrand and just a couple of others so far is that this is westward subduction beneath the insula. The insular comes in, and we're getting a bunch of younger Plutons with that slab failure tear thing, and we're invading from below as a result of that animation that I showed you. I can't remember where we started, so I don't even know where we are time-wise, but, oh, was it? Now keep going around the block there, sir. I was in such a great mood, and then we had our technology problem, and now I'm a little pissy. Sorry, Patrick. Okay, we have one more act to go, and we visit for the first time a very important scientist. Merle Beck. So you're probably not new to me. You've seen a bunch of other things that I've been doing over the years, and you know that I'm fond of this gentleman, Merle Beck, who's I think 87 years old now and living in Bellingham, Washington, and just got an email from him yesterday. I asked him if he could write up a couple of paragraphs specifically for our show here today, and he obliged. And we'll get to his specific recollections, but here's just I'll just show them individually. Here's the original bomb in the marketplace. 1972, Merle Beck from Western Washington. It was probably State College at the time. And the title, Anomalous Paleolatitudes of Cretaceous Granitic Rocks. So we're going to talk about the Sierra Nevada batholith, the Coast Plutonic Complex again, and the Peninsula Ranges Complex again. But I'm talking about Merle, so we're going to revisit those three batholiths again, but not look at the rock types, not look at the light-colored versus dark-colored, etc. We're going to look at the paleomagnetism. And I can't hold it. Merle's work is going to show that the Coast Plutonic Complex and the Peninsular Range batholiths are the same stuff, paleomagnetically, and the Sierra is the odd man out. Remember what we just did? The CPC in British Columbia was question mark, maybe not the same stuff as those other two guys further south. Merle's saying, I've looked at all three of these very, very carefully paleomagnetically, and the Sierras are totally different than the BC and the Mexican granite. So I've been working with his papers. I've been working with the interview I did with him in late summer. This is, according to Merle, this is the paper in 1976 that was published in the American Journal of Science that really stirred things up. I think he had a different phrase for it. We'll talk about discordant paleomagnetic poles in just a second. This is my personal favorite of Merle's papers because of the way that he laid out some of the data on some very simple maps. You know that I'm a simple person. So it's mainly these three papers that I've really been enjoying and continue to read and reread. Berningshausen joined Merle in the mid-1990s, and so the last major paper that I think exists from Merle with Bernie is in Revisiting Baja, BC, 30 years later. So, for especially those who are brand new to the concept, I don't want to spend 2 hours on this, but let me try to give you a very quick version as I understand it. And then we'll look at more of my hand-drawn maps using Merle's paleomag work and compare them with what we just did with Hildebrand's synthesis of the bedrock chemistry. Okay, paleomagnetism from a guy who knows very little about it, and go. This is about volleyball. Take two. This is a volleyball, and the volleyball can be our planet, planet Earth. Okay? And we have a North Pole and we have a South Pole. And perhaps you're aware that our planet is like a giant magnet, and there are invisible magnetic field lines that come out of the poles. They are parallel to the surface of the Earth at the equator, and then they intersect the South Pole at a 90-degree angle. So just look at my hand and the intersection of my hand with the Earth's surface. In Antarctica, the magnetic field lines are coming in 90 degrees. Again, at the equator, Equatorial Guinea, the field lines are parallel to the surface. And then up at Santa Claus's house, the magnetic field lines, invisible, are entering the Earth at 90 degrees to the Earth's surface. Those are the extremes. Parallel at the equator, vertical magnetic field lines coming in at the poles. But if you are at 47 degrees north latitude, as Ellensburg is precisely on, 47 degrees north, then you have an intersection of these magnetic field lines at a particular angle. And the angle as it intersects the Earth's surface, like intersects your town, has a different angle dependent on, muffler boy, thank you for losing my train of thought, jackass. Sorry, Patrick. So as we get closer and closer to the North Pole, the intersection of the magnetic field lines with your latitude gets higher and higher. That's the general concept. So there are rocks like the Mount Stuart batholith that have magnetite minerals, magnetite grains within them. There are minerals that are actually magnetic. And if this granite, or granite, let's just call it granite, if this granite is 93 million years old, and it is, and if Merle comes and drills a hole in this Mount Stuart batholith rock in Icicle Canyon, remember we took a little field trip there? And if Merle or Bernie or some of his students, Linda, Merle's original student, if they drill into that mountain and they carefully measure the orientation of this core of Mount Stuart batholith, and therefore very carefully measure the inclination of those magnetite grains away from horizontal, you can determine where this magma was located when it crystallized 93 million years old. You can figure out the paleolatitude of that magma by measuring the orientation of the magnetite grains. The magnetite grains are basically a permanent time capsule of the magnetic field of the Earth at the time that the magma turned to stone. Now, right off the bat, most geologists don't understand paleomagnetism. I certainly don't. Most geologists have never been in a paleomagnetic lab before. Most geologists don't even really understand how you can take something like this out of a mountain and then do something in a lab and say anything about it. Like, how do you even know the orientation of this thing? But that technique has been done more than 50 years. That technique of paleomagnetic gathering of data has been done all over the world. It's been done in more than granites. You can do that same kind of paleomagnetic measurement of magnetite or magnetic grains in sedimentary layers, in basaltic lava flows. You can be all over the world with different ages, not just stuff in the mid-Cretaceous. And the results of all those different kinds of rocks, all those different locations around the world, and all those different kinds of deposits or settings, they're remarkably consistent. If you just take the time to look at the data set, it seems at this point impossible to just say it's all wrong. Now, there are plenty of people who manage to do that and say it's all wrong. But those that are honestly with an open heart and open mind looking at that data and thinking hard about it are seeing that there's value in this paleomagnetic signature, especially with the rocks of the insular superterrane. But this all started with Mount Stuart batholith in 1972. We're coming up on 50 years. And we're going to visit with Merle in the Cozy Fort. We're going to visit with, geologically speaking, Todd Smith from San Clemente, California in the Cozy Fort. We're going to have Shirley from Tahoe City in the Cozy Fort. But before we go to the Cozy Fort, let's do a couple of quick things with Merle's work. We're starting Baja BC early. Sunday is officially titled Baja BC, but I'm getting you started right now. I ran out of time, but this is some of my notes from 5 years ago in pencil that I just quickly took a Sharpie to. And I'm just trying to help you see that it doesn't matter if we have a lava flow or a magma body or even sediment. We have different latitudes. We have different inclinations. These red lines are invisible magnetic field lines intersecting horizontal. And therefore, I can't give you the math, but in my dummy brain, you can go, oh, we have a 32-degree inclination here. That means we were either 32 degrees north or 32 degrees south of the equator at whatever time this lava flow cooled. Inclination's 81. Okay, we're close to the poles. We're either getting close to the North Pole or the South Pole. North Pole or the South Pole. North Pole, you get it. You can determine latitude from paleomagnetism. Okay, let's go right to Merle's papers. Now Merle, do I have an uncolored one handy? I got to pick up the pace. No, I don't. So these are my colored pencils about 5 years ago, taking one of Merle's diagrams from 1982. And Merle saying, let me plot for you in his paper. This is 10 years after his initial paper, by the way. Here's the CPC. Here's the Peninsula Ranges batholith. In orange, my choice, the Sierra Nevadas and the Idaho batholith. So Merle says the CPC and the Peninsula Ranges, those guys are identical paleomagnetically. And based on the paleomag from these two batholiths, we know they had to be closer to the equator when their magmas crystallized. Let's cut to it. I don't have the details for you yet. I will in a second. But Merle Beck's papers in the 1970s and 80s said we have discordant paleomagnetic signatures from the CPC, including Mount Stewart, and from the Peninsula Ranges batholith. Discordant, meaning surprising, meaning they show that these two batholiths had their magmas crystallized in the mid-Cretaceous much further south than they are now. These two guys. But the Sierra Nevada mountains have not moved. This is 50 years ago. 45 years ago, Merle Beck is saying the Sierra Nevada batholith has concordant paleomagnetic details, meaning it did not do crazy amounts of northward movement. But these two guys did, and they're damn near identical paleomag-wise. So with that information, Merle said, can I please for you take these two red guys that have low inclinations, orientation of magnetite grains that are a lower angle than you would expect given where they are located today. And can I restore them? We're restoring again, but not the fruitcake now. We're restoring batholiths back to their original location. So this is right out of Merle's paper. He's keeping the Sierras stationary, but he's slotting or moving the CPC and the Peninsula, the PBR, the PRB, further south, based on paleomag. Let me give you some details. Here's the same point that I just gave you, but a little bit differently. I'm drawing a Canadian, an American, and a Mexican. There's the CPC, there's the Sierras, there's the Peninsula Ranges batholith, the PRB. Again, both of these two guys, Canadian and Mexican, are identical as far as the paleomagnetic signature. It's the Sierras in California that do not show any of that movement north. And notice, please, Merle was also noticing a clockwise rotation. These batholiths had been rotated clockwise. So it's not just moving them north, but while they're being moved north, they're going to rotate clockwise. He can tell that using the paleomagnetic signature. Now, this is about the time in the early 1970s that Tanya Atwater is writing an exciting paper about the California geology scene having a San Andreas fault and having the entire west coast of California being just a big shear zone. Where you, can I do it backwards for you? I'm looking at you, but I'm going to try to do it backwards. Where stuff in Western California is moving north and everything is being rotated in between my two hands. A shear zone. Western California moving farther north than Eastern California on the San Andreas, but there are things getting caught in between my two hands. I happen to have a volleyball. Now, we don't have planet Earth, we just have some bedrock. Can this just be bedrock? There's the text on the volleyball, poorly inflated by the way. Now what's going to happen to this volleyball if I do that same kind of motion and I move this westernmost part of California further north than Eastern California? I'm going to rotate the crust caught in between these two guys in a clockwise sense. Correct? Merle is seeing this in the paleomagnetic signature of the CPC, which is now in British Columbia, and the Peninsular Ranges batholith, which is in Mexico and Southern California today, but was definitely further south in Mexico back then. And the CPC moved way farther north than the Peninsular Ranges batholith, by the way. So, discordant paleomag, they used to be further south, and they have both been rotated. Similar, I'm screaming now, but this is so cool. Many of you love this diagram. And I've always thought about Ray Wells when I put this diagram in front of your face, and Bob Butler. But they were showing, really in the last 50 million years, that this continuous clockwise rotation of California, Western Oregon, Western Washington, this works with audiences of all ages. They just love the fact that these blocks are moving in a clockwise sense. Well, guess who started the whole thing? Guess who made the first discoveries of clockwise rotation going back way earlier than 50 million years ago? Merle frickin' Beck. So do I have something a little bit more detailed for you about how much this crust has moved and when? Sure I do. I'm a public servant. And then we'll read Merle's memory. And then it's time to go to the cozy fort. He looks at his watch for some reason. I don't know why. I've already made this point. Hildebrand's plutonic rock ages in chemistry make the Sierra Nevadas and the Peninsular Ranges match beautifully with the split personalities. But I'm now talking about not looking at the age, not looking at the minerals in the rock. I'm talking about the orientation of the magnetites. And in that case, the Sierras is off, not moved north at all, not rotated at all. These two guys, north and rotated clockwise. Here's Merle in the 1970s. From his various holes that he drilled into Mount Stewart batholith and other places in northern Washington, near his home in in Bellingham, Washington. It's got to be mid-Cretaceous batholiths now. If you get into far younger batholiths, there's none of this. None of it. It's just the mid-Cretaceous granitic rocks that are showing this in the CPC. So there's all sorts of checks on this. Not every granite that he finds in the Pacific Northwest, no. But mid-Cretaceous, part of the CPC, you're going to move stuff. You can read as well as I. We're going to move this block 25 degrees latitude north in 25 million years. And emerging at the time, again from Tanya Atwater's work, is an ocean plate that you'll hear much more about on Sunday called the Kula Plate. And the Kula was an ocean plate that was moving north during this time. It's the magic carpet ride, as I like to call it, to allow this northward movement. So I think possibly today will be frustrating for you at the end. You'll want to go a lot more detail into this and the mechanics of this and other evidence for Baja BC. I'm asking if you can wait till Sunday for that. So maybe the live Q&A will be kind of me putting you off a little bit. I'll try to answer what I can, but I'm really trying to separate this into two things. All right. So those are early numbers. I don't know if Merle stuck with these numbers and the math with this. But this concept of moving that much is still on the table and has been for quite a while. So that got the whole idea rolling, and Ted Irving from Canada, from British Columbia, hooked up with Merle, and together they came up with this concept called Baja BC, where we're doing this crazy amount of northward movement of those, primarily the insular superterrane, between 85 and 55 million years ago. And you're like, wow, I've never heard of this. Why not? Well, most geologists are still not eating it. They're still not drinking the Kool-Aid. They're still not, 50 years later, it's a minority opinion still. But some of us feel it continues to be interesting, and the data continues to come in of various sources that Sunday, besides just the Plutons, to back up that this is a thing. So it's still a controversy, it's still a discussion, it's not even 50-50. Most geologists don't agree with this. But I like it. And it impacts areas very close to where I live. And so I continue to teach it. A little bit from Merle, and we go into the Cozy Fork. Sent yesterday at noon. Nick, for what they may be worth, here are some of my reflections on the state of geotectonic thinking about the Western Cordillera during the 1970s and 80s. Note that they are my reflections. This is Merle Beck talking to you directly, specifically writing this for you. These are my reflections and recollections. Other players, such as Ted Irving and Davy Jones, may have had somewhat different views. Too bad they're not around to comment. Well, first and foremost, I didn't regard the bulk of displaced crustal blocks as in any way exotic. Without much thought, I casually assumed that they had originated as part of North America itself and had been transported relatively north by the north oblique nature of subduction of the Farallon Plate. In fact, I spent an inordinate amount of time and energy pondering the circumstances under which this would occur. It turns out that theoretically what is needed are a shallow subduction angle, a high angle of obliquity, and a mysterious factor measuring the stickiness between the interacting plates, which I never figured out how to measure. I wrote several papers on the subject, which you can find very easily. The most cited one appeared in the 1991 volume, Physics of Earth and Planetary Interiors. I don't have that one. Another player in the northward transport game was, of course, the Kula Plate, but we didn't know how far south it had ever extended. Clearly, detach a chunk of crust and attach it to the Kula, and northward displacement would be very fast. But we didn't know how, when, or even if this might have occurred. Also in those days, I thought of northward displacement as occurring piecemeal, along a series of moderately sized strike-slip faults and shear zones. Then Ted Irving introduced the concept of Baja BC, which seemed to imply the existence of a San Andreas fault type super through-going break. That really got the geologists stirred up. I said earlier that I thought of these allochthonous terrains as originally part of North America, not exotic by today's terminology. The one universally acknowledged, indubitably exotic terrain was, of course, Rangelia, which contained rocks that must have originated in the ocean. Davy Jones, being a paleontologist, may have thought more about along the exotic lines, but I don't recall him talking about it. The next exotic terrain to be discussed in those early days was, I think, Stikenia. But by that time, I had departed for the relative simplicity and excellent cuisine of the Central Andes. Thank you, Merle, for adding a personal touch to this discussion. So through the camera lens, I can already feel you wanting to just chew on this and talk more about it. Or if you have been thinking about Baja, BC for a long time and you're ready to pounce or whatever, I'll do what I can to entertain your questions and comments. But yep. So we're going in the Cozy Fort. I don't have a wireless mic, but I tried this once in the backyard last spring, and it may have actually kind of worked until I got confused. There's a chance Daddy won't be confused this time. So you're going to have to give me a couple extra seconds here. You can notice the lights turned off that I have, courtesy of Oscar. Oscar's ideas on what to buy. So I'm pleased with those, Oscar. I'm curious in the live comments right now if you like me talking without a wireless mic. Like if you feel like it's louder than Embedio audio that we've had recently. I kind of am hoping that's the case. For my testing this week, I thought that was maybe the case. Sure, I'm glad you're with us. We still have more than 700. I noticed that we have about, I think we're hovering about 700 or so that watch live, which is great. And then I think about, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 that watch the replay before the next show. I don't have a good sense if people are watching after skipping a bunch, like the last one they saw was G, and here they are with us now. If people are doing that, I can't imagine it makes a whole lot of sense, but maybe it does. There's plenty I don't know, and we're about to finish the series up. I still don't know a bunch of stuff. So let's try. I don't like the Bluetooth and all that. I can't rely on anything that's... okay, well, let's see if this will work.
Battery 100%.
Battery 100%.
Battery 100%.
I got battery 100%. Shit.
Battery 100%.
I got battery 100%. Shit.
Battery 100%.
Oh, what a clown. Okay, I just realized I got to turn the laptop around with this thing connected to it. I can do it, I think. So do you know about a guy named Todd who lives in San Clemente, California? I think he's mostly active on Instagram, but his channel is called Geologically Speaking. And Todd and his whole family, I think, was watching most of the shows last spring when they were everybody home, you know. We were all locked down. And I've been a big fan of Todd's over the, I don't know how long you've been doing it, Todd, but in the last year for sure, I've been a fan of what you're doing. You've got a really nice presence, and I think you're in real estate. You're like a house inspector, but you just do this for fun. And I saw one that Todd posted on the Peninsula Ranges batholith, and I asked him to put it on his YouTube channel. So if you go to Geologically Speaking YouTube channel, I think he's posting a little bit there. That's where I'm showing you this one. But I'm gonna show the beginning, and then this one's 10 minutes long. So I'm gonna show the beginning, and then I'm gonna skip to a part that I think is helpful to us. Todd from San Clemente, California, in Orange County, between Los Angeles and San Diego. Okay, can I do this?
Definitely not halite. Oh, good morning. Greetings from Southern California, USA. Doing a little dumpster diving this morning near the Santa Ana Mountains. You can see them there in the background. They're part of the Peninsula Ranges down in Southern California and actually have some of the oldest rocks in Orange County. I'm going to be looking for two different formations. There's the Bedford Canyon Formation, which is made up of meta-sedimentary rocks from the Jurassic period. We're talking the age of the dinosaurs, late Jurassic, 100 million years ago. And then there was some subduction off the coast of California of the Farallon Plate, and it created volcanoes. The most famous ones created by the Farallon Plate are the Sierra Nevada mountains, but the Peninsula Ranges are actually associated with that same event. So not only are we looking for meta-sedimentary rocks from back then, but we're also looking for extrusive and intrusive igneous rocks from that Farallon subduction event where magma was created. Some of it made it to the surface and some of it didn't. So we're dumpster diving in the sense of going up Trabuco Canyon. This is a creek that comes out of the Santa Ana Mountains. And what better way to find out what these mountains are made of by coming into a creek bed where all the erosional debris is being collected. So we're just gonna trailblaze up the creek and see if we can find something interesting. Join me.
I'm sorry, did you say meta-sedimentary rock? What is that?
That's right, meta-sedimentary rock. So what is that? Well, let's break it down. Well, what's a sedimentary rock?
This guy's good, isn't he? Have such a great presence. So I'm going to skip ahead to a little bit of granite stuff towards the end, since that's our topic, our Plutons. But I strongly recommend watching this whole thing.
Chamber below the Santa Ana mountain range in the age of the dinosaurs. Do you guys mind if I hit some of this intrusive igneous rock with the rock hammer? I just got the rock hammer. I'd like to use it, if you don't mind. The reason you want to break open igneous rocks is the outside of it is all weathered, so it's kind of dull. Can't really get the look of what the minerals actually look like. You need to expose the minerals from within. Nick Zentner calls them fresh minerals. Copyright trademark. All right, let's do this. Eye protection's on. Weak. Come on, you can do this. Now I do better. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Great. Look at that. Fresh minerals. So again, this is the intrusive igneous rock. The great.
You do a great job there, Todd. Thanks for joining us here today live, as you do many times. And I hope people can find Geologically Speaking on Instagram and other places. We go to Merle Beck. We talked about him in folder number 3. I visited with Merle in his backyard in August. This is Nick on the Fly, episode 13. You can find the full interview if you're interested. Here's a section that is appropriate for what we were discussing today. A little backstory on how Merle started in the Peninsula Ranges batholith and then started sampling in the Coast Plutonic Complex, Mount Stewart. What was the context of that paper? Were you adding to somebody's idea already, or were you coming out of the blue?
No, I was adding to an idea that I had originally originated in my brain some years earlier.
Okay.
But I was also basing it on some results that other people had had, essentially at that same time.
Okay.
And the context is, when I was at UC Riverside, I had already, I actually had more publications than a lot of the faculty, and I had a friend there who wanted to do paleomagnetism. And I had a functional lab going in Washington, D.C. So he and I studied the paleomagnetism of granitic rocks, which we called the Southern California batholiths.
Okay.
Now I think they call it the Peninsula Range batholith.
Yeah, give us a couple examples. Where could you find those rocks that you were looking
Near
at?
San Diego and on the, well, we didn't go into Mexico, but
Okay.
northern Mexico, around Riverside, San Bernardino.
Okay.
Wherever there's granitic rocks exposed in the mountain range, that's that batholith.
Got it.
And we did a pretty thorough study, and Ron went and made the measurements at another guy's lab. Ron was my student, my fellow student.
Sure.
And we got a really nice paleomagnetic direction, but it didn't match the reference pole. And the way you looked at it, it looked like it had been, these rocks had originated south of where they are now and had rotated clockwise. And so Ron and I puzzled over that. And at about that same time, there was a very seminal paper published in the GSA Bulletin by Tanya Atwater, of whom you've no doubt heard.
Yep.
And she likened Western North America, when she really got waving her arms, she likened Western North America to a huge dextral shear zone. And so Ron and I sit there and say, well, what happens if our little chunk of batholith is stuck in a shear zone? And so the answer, of course, is with respect to the internal part of the continent, outside the shear zone, those rocks will have seemed to have been moved north and rotated clockwise. But we didn't publish that.
Okay.
It was too revolutionary.
That was in the mid-1960s, maybe?
That would have been 67, 68.
Okay.
So then I came up here and I got in my lab and I ratted around and trying to find good places to work.
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of grad students, and one of them was this
What?
very nice and an intelligent woman named Linda Lawrence, who later married and became Nosen.
Okay.
And Linda and I worked on my God, what granitic rocks are there around here better than the Mount Stewart batholith? You can drive right through parts of it. You can go up Icicle Creek.
Yeah.
And so we went up there and we sampled in 8, 9, 10 places and drilled standard paleomagnetic sites, 6, 8, 10 cores per site, and brought them down here. And she worked in my new lab and she got a beautiful direction. And lo and behold, it looked like these rocks had moved north with respect to North America and rotated clockwise. And I said, my God, that's what Tessera and I found. At that point, I started thinking there was something really seriously going on here. This kind of application of paleomagnetism to tectonics was pretty much unheard of. It was ignored by most geologists, but I think the paleomagnetic community took notice.
Now, a decade earlier, the paleomagnetic. So that was a real treat to be able to talk to Merle directly about this. A few years earlier, we interviewed him for a very short PBS show. I've showed this, I think, twice already in this live stream series last spring, but let me just give you a minute of this and then we'll go to your questions. The Cascades. Come on, baby.
But the rock is way too old for the Cascades story. Cascades have only been there for 40 million years, only. And the rock in Mount Stewart is 93 million years old.
A lot of evidence has accrued over the years that major chunks of the western edge of North America didn't form as part of North America. It formed out in the Pacific someplace and were transported by plate tectonics, generally from the south to the north, and then they were plastered onto the continent and then sheared up.
Mount Stewart was part of an exotic terrain that attached itself to the western edge of North America. But where did it come from? Geologists at Western Washington University believe the rocks in Mount Stewart were formed far from here. I drove over to Western to visit Merle Beck and Bernie Hausen in their paleomagnetic laboratory. Merle, in particular, has spent more than 40 years on this topic, collecting samples from Mount Stewart itself and analyzing that rock for a paleomagnetic signature.
I got in pretty early. I'm not a founding father of paleomagnetism, but I'm close. You know, I'm an elderly nephew sort of thing. I got an NSF grant and I worked on rocks in the Cascades. And there it was, Mount Stewart. So we went up there and we drilled in about a little more than half a dozen places.
These granodiorite samples are part of their collection.
It triggered the whole controversy. And it's such a beautiful rock.
Yes, it is.
Paleomagnetically as well as aesthetically. It gives you the nicest directions you've ever seen.
But those directions came as a shock to the
Okay.
scientific world. If their initial
Stop. Okay, that's enough. And both of those programs are online. If you just go to YouTube into the search bar and type in Nick Zentner, Baja, BC, I'm sure you'll find that and more. Or just Baja, BC. There's probably not a whole lot on YouTube just on Baja, BC. There should be more. There should be way more of a spotlight on this stuff, in my humble opinion. And we'll do more with different kinds of data. If it was just Merle's data, then maybe we wouldn't talk about it a whole lot more, but there's plenty more. Okay, let's try to get the lights back on. We're losing the light as promised. The sun's about to go behind Menashtash Ridge, behind you there. So we're about to get kind of dark anyway. But let's close, looked into the sun. Let's pop the live chat out like a boss. And I'll try to answer a few questions here before we quit. Let me get some wine. It's Friday afternoon. After that, after yet another problem. So thank you, Kathy, for the drink. No, that's called a glass. Thank you, Kathy, in Brisbane, Australia, for the glass. Thank you, Julie, from Prosser. Yet another gift. Horsehaven Hills, a 2017 Merlot. And your questions. I really appreciate you being here, as always. Oh, what just happened? I went to another. Hang on, Patrick. Okay. So I put so many qualifiers on the live Q&A, you're probably not sure what you want to ask now. Just go for it. Sabre in Saguaro National Park or whatever. Is the Pluton batholith formation the driving force of the geologic elevator? That's an interesting question. Hildebrand is talking about collision between North America and Insular, tearing and ultimately failing the slab, magmas coming up, including the Mount Stewart granite, and then exhumation and uplift happening shortly after that. Now, I'm not sure the timing of that works. I definitely know it does not work in the North Cascades. The North Cascades are up, our exhumation, our geologic up, and our exhumation was starting 50, wasn't it? I think Chelan migmatite was the earliest going up, and that was like 80, maybe 75 million years ago. So that's on my list of things to try to learn more about Sabre. The geologic down and the geologic up with the elevator and the timing of that and what's ultimately causing that. So there's going to be plenty of I don't knows, but I'll try to comment at least on your good questions. Marbles collector, where are the Baja BC faults? Would you please wait till Sunday? I will say now, I'll just give you a little sneak peek. I will say now that drawing cartoons like these are maybe not what we want. Now, I was drawing these a few years ago based on Darrell Cowan's excellent 1997 Baja, BC Revisited Crucial Tests paper that we will feature on Sunday. But to draw one major fault similar to today's San Andreas is maybe not the best way to go about this, because therefore it feels like if you focus on this with your images and maps and say, well, are you a Baja BC yes or no person, then all the interest goes into the actual fault and not the crazy amount of wonderful geologic evidence that will be compiled for you on Sunday. I feel like the energy and the discussion gets away from the good bedrock evidence and focuses on a one monster strike slip fault, which probably does not exist. If we haven't found it in 50 years, it's probably not there. It's more likely that instead of one major structure, there's a bunch of smaller strike slip faults, like we have in the North Cascades, that together are accommodating this more than 2,000 miles of motion. That's my answer. But I have more to say and more to share with you on Sunday about that. Thank you for the question, Marbles Collector. Dino, do the ages of the Plutons in the CPC get younger or older as you go north? That I don't know either. There's plenty I don't know. It's safe, according to what I've read, that there's a split personality to the CBC, that the Western CPC is different than the Eastern CPC. As you go north, I lose confidence, I lose basic information. And we'll talk about Will Matthews from Calgary on Sunday. And he's got some interesting things to say about Western CPC versus Eastern CPC. So let's just leave that one there. But further north in Yukon and Alaska, I got nothing to say. Thanks. Zig, are there any paleomags from the top and bottom of a Pluton or the batholith? That's an interesting question. I don't know if it matters, first of all. Does it matter if you're at the top or the middle or the bottom of a Pluton? Shouldn't it all be the same paleomag? My first thought is it doesn't matter. Second of all, we just have the batholiths we're given at the particular level that we're given. So Merle went up Icicle Creek by Leavenworth and drilled with his student Linda, and you go to CPC and you go, I mean, you're not digging 5 miles down to get a certain sample. So interesting, never thought about it, but I'm not sure it matters where we are in the depth of the Pluton, although maybe I'm missing the message of your question. Jay, could CPC and PRB moved then the Sierra developed? The batholiths are all generally the same age. You're wondering, I think, why the Sierra Nevadas did not. I forgot Shirley's. Shirley, I'm sorry. Can you wait till Sunday? I'm sorry. I forgot yours. Why did I? Oh, yours was a. Oh, and Hildebrandt. Hang on. Okay, we're not doing Cozy Fort. But I got 2 more things to show you. It's dark enough, I don't think you'll have a big reflection. Where's the, yeah. Improvisation number 32 today. This one's my fault. Actually, they're all my fault. I'm sure they're all my fault. Am I gonna run out of battery here? And Gary, I did the same thing. I forgot about I was so busy. Okay. So we've got stuff from Gary. I think I'm going to cut the live Q&A short unless, I don't know. This will work, won't it? You can see. We don't need sound for Gary. Boop, boop. Backcountry Gary, a staple for the show. I hope this works for you with minimal. That's not bad, is it? So you've seen that from the Melange Belt. You've seen that from the Melange Belt. Gary's got some Pluton shows. Oh, shit. Do we need it? No, we don't. Gary says, let's go to a few Plutons. I mean, we've already gone with some other people. How about that? So in the case of our, let's say, slab failure Plutons, if you like that concept, Black Peak batholith, that's in the age range. We're shortly after the 100 million year old main event. But the Golden Horn, which is a dominant batholith, way too young for our story today. Golden Horn, that's why it's called the Golden Horn, says Gary. Gary, I'm sorry if this reflection is screwing up with your photos, but I just don't want to set up the whole cozy fort again. Beautiful photos, from, as always, from Gary Paul in Darrington, Washington. Oh, man. Look at that saddle. Don't you want to just go right up and over that thing? Beautiful contact between two Plutons. Black Peak, twice as old as the Golden Horn. What an amazing gift you are to all of us, Gary, with your work. What's this? Is this more? I forget where we are in our show now, Gary. I've shown these, haven't I? Oh no, there's three more. Yeah, okay. These are still some of the Pluton photos that Gary wanted to share. The Dembel Pluton I know nothing about, but I certainly want to learn about them now that I've gotten in here up above Holden Lake. The Marble Mount Pluton, also equally not very well versed on it. So there's plenty to learn. Remember, Mike Eddy from Purdue will be going Pluton to Pluton, so I need to learn way more about these Plutons. But if they're Eocene, too young for us. Yeah. These guys could not budge that Marble Mount Pluton in whatever year that was. Okay, Gary, thank you. Now, Shirley was the one that gave me that beautiful book from the Sierra area. And she made this video report that's 2 minutes and 35 seconds long. And I need audio for Shirley.
Battery 100%.
Battery 100%. Shirley from Tahoe City. Hang on.
We spend our time
Start again.
at a remote property in the Sierra Nevada.
Oh, we're not functional? Hang on.
Battery 100%.
Oh, I'm not plugged in. Okay. Take two. Here we go, Shirley.
Hi, Nick. My name is Shirley, and I manage a construction company in Lake Tahoe. We spend our time at a remote property in the Sierra Nevada that sits on exotic terrain. I wanted to understand the beautiful and unusual rock in the area and fell in love with geology. It has been difficult to get information, but I found a few sources. I truly felt stuck until I came across your video series. I thought I would give you a tour of two of these exotic terrains, one of which you mentioned in one of your A to Z videos. Here we are at the Shoe Fly, or better known in Washington as the Alexander Formation, and possibly the Cache Creek. But we're not in Washington, we're in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, near the town of Quincy. The formations in our area lie on top of each other, much like your pizza boxes. The area contains several exotic terrains, but they start with the Shoe Fly, which may be about 10,000 feet thick, folded and containing sandstones, slates, and chert. The Shoe Fly is the oldest rock in our part of the Sierras. Here on the Quincy-LaPorte Road, we can find rocks of the Shoe Fly exposed in road cuts. I am most familiar with the structure called the Sierra Buttes Formation. It is the next youngest, and it lies on top of the Shoofly. We own 35 acres on the Sierra Buttes that was once a gold mine. The miners called the rock greenstone. The rock is slightly metamorphosed, so it's fairly easy to know what the original rock once was. The rocks that make up the Sierra Buttes are dacite, volcanic breccias, tuff, chert, ash, slates, quartz, and sometimes pretty epidode. We have a fossil bed below our property of ammonites. This formation was created in the late Devonian around 390 million years ago. Sierra Buttes Formation is an island arc formed in the deep ocean and shaped by glaciers. Could the Sierra Buttes have been formed as an oceanic plateau? Could the string bean have reached down to my neck of the woods? You have taught us how these deep water formations accreted, but I have a lot more questions. With 5 additional marine formations, Plutons, erosional and volcanic formations, and faults, we invite you to the Sierra Nevadas to help us sort out this hot mess.
Shirley, that was excellent. Thank you. You spent a lot of time on that, I can tell. Very much appreciate your time. You did a great job with that. Thank you. The last thing I have here, and we got people coming back in the house, and who can blame them? It's after 4 o'clock. Give me a second. I got to turn on the furnace. Hildebrand, you want to hear him? This is a talk that he put online, probably for a conference. You know, in COVID time now, you can't go to these conferences, so you are presenting your talk and you're narrating your slides and then you're putting it online. So that's one plus. You can actually get a hold of some of these things. So this is a long program. I'll just give you the first few slides, but he narrates some of his slides and it adds a little bit to what we were doing and adds some news things as well that I probably will not expand upon. But
a century ago, Blackwelder used the term Oregonian to refer to the mid-Cretaceous deformational event in the North American Cordillera. Although it is widespread, it is generally underappreciated, if not unknown, by most geologists. Our work has shown that the orogeny represents the closure at about 100 million years of an oceanic basin that opened after the Nevadan orogeny and east of the present-day peninsular ranges in Sierra Nevada at about 135 million years ago. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with this scene of...
Okay.
The Peninsular Ranges batholith extends from Southern California and northern Baja southward beneath younger volcanic cover through the Baja Peninsula, and once the Gulf of California is closed, into Zihuatanejo. The batholith contains 2 main magmatic suites, a 128 to 105 million year old suite of epizonal plutons, ranging in composition from gabbro to granite, with a comagmatic suite of volcanic rocks and associated sediments, known as the Alacito-Santiago Peak.
All right, moving on.
This model figure from Martini et al. Shows the overall scheme, from opening of a marginal basin in the early Cretaceous with sediments derived from both sides of the basin as documented by detailed provenance studies, to closure of the basin at about 100 million years. Note that the arc was on the western plate.
Westward subduction. Skip.
All the evidence thus indicates that closure of the Bisbee-Arperos Basin at about 100 million years was by westerly subduction.
All right.
We found that the 2 suites were readily differentiated by tracing...
If you go to...
a suite of discrimination diagrams. As is well known...
Bob, please. If you go to roberthildebrand.com, I think it is, maybe somebody can link to it down below. Can you find the link where he's got all his publications? You can get to that narrated talk as well. That's how I found it. So there's no shortage of stuff for him to share with you if you have interest. There's a lot there. I still don't totally know what to do with him. But I sure enjoy looking at the stuff. Okay, I'm back. We'll do a few more live Q&A. I still got a little battery left. If you're still with us, how many we got? We've still got more than 600. Sure, why not? You might have to redo your question because I'm down to real time here, I think. But I need to pop the chat out like a boss right between the eyes. That'll help a little bit. I'll go back a couple of minutes, but if you've got a burning question, go ahead and type it in again if you wouldn't mind. If you're still interested in asking a question, maybe I'll answer it. Yeah. Shirley, yes, Shirley did a great job. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Burke Museum, Doug. That's John Figge that did most of that stuff on that website. Kyle, are you the guy that did the Pluton invasion cartoon? Thank you. I think that may have been you. Kyle asks, is there a way to distinguish between Plutons created by westward subduction versus eastward subduction? Hotspots and spreading centers are completely different magmas. Correct. Westward. So, as I understand it now, Hildebrandt loves westward subduction mainly because he's finding the Plutons here. He's like, how can you have this and have the Plutons on the opposite side of this suture? And most geologists say, well, what you're saying doesn't match with the bedrock geology that we know in California and Nevada and other places. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. But I think his main message is, this is eastward for you, right? He says, this is the model that everybody likes, that it's eastward subduction of the Farallon, and you get your magmas here in the overriding plate. But as he views these split personalities of these magmas and other things related to the magmas on either side of the magmas, he sees a lot of the magmas or the Plutons on the wrong side of the sutures, if that makes any sense to you. That's about as far as I am. Dino, have I seen Sigloak's automatic scroll? Reconstruction of Western North America on YouTube channel Earthbite. I have not, but I'm guessing that's Edward Clenette's 2020 animation. And I'll be using that in show Z again, but I've already showed it a couple of times. Patrick, age 7, you're still with us? Isn't it your bedtime? Isn't it supper time, Patrick? Patrick, age 7, is there ever any difference in the paleomagnetic signature within the same batholith? Patrick? I'm not sure I was potty trained when I was age 7. I'll have to check with my mom on that, but I think I was struggling with that. Not asking if there's possibly 2 different paleomagnetic signatures in the same batholith. Good job. I don't think so, Patrick. Especially if we're in one Pluton with one distinct batch of magma that has a pretty narrow age range. But if you're asked, did you use the word batholith or Pluton? Batholith. So if you're thinking of a batholith, Patrick, and you know that there's different ages of Plutons within the batholith, then that's a really interesting question. And that's probably what you meant, because you're a very interesting person, Patrick. I don't know. Maybe I'll hear from Merle. I don't think he knows how to be in the live chat with us, but he's been watching these shows. Smiling Llamas. How do you reconcile the discrepancies in data from 3 embedded Pluton bits? I don't know what you're talking about. I'd be happy to learn. If you want to email me what you mean, I don't know what 3 embedded Pluton bits means. Lars, how can we tell the difference between post-formation tilt and paleomagnetic inclination? That's a fair question and one of the main arguments against Merle's work. We're talking more than 90 million years ago that these Plutons were liquid. And think of all the folding and other kinds of tilting and adjustments that those Plutons have experienced. It's not like they crystallized a year ago. That's more than 90 million years ago. How can you possibly say that's the original inclination of those grains? And all I can say is that there's been decades of follow-up to address that very specific question. And I can't give you more than that. There's a specific paper out of Yale by Mark Brandon who addresses it specifically with the Mount Stewart batholith, another former Darrell Cowan student, I might add. But I don't have the background to understand what they did. It's still a major argument against the whole thing, for sure. But again, if you look at the breadth of the paleomag work over the decades, over the countries, with the various rock types, and they're all still giving the same story. I don't understand. I wasn't a bedwetter, Charlie. Mr. Tom, how long for a Pluton to cool and fully harden? Good question. I don't know. There have been some papers that have come out this fall that talk about an amazing amount of magma in a very short amount of time, but that's not very helpful to you. There's one that just came out, I think. What was it like? I'll screw it up if I try to say it off the top of my head, but it's a basic question I don't have an answer for. Like, are we talking weeks or years or decades or 1,000 years? 1,000,000 years? One more and I think we're done. Charlie, does the 100-million-year-old line indicate when westward subduction turned into eastward subduction? That's a great question. Let's finish with that. I already said we were going to finish with that. So to me, most of these live streams are new material, and some of it I'm more excited by than others. For this show, I'm most excited by some of this basic stuff here. And the fact that there's a split personality to these batholiths and that there is evidence of a major event 100 million years ago. I love that. So Charlie's question was, if we're going with the slab failure thing, and these pinks are coming up as soon as we have North America slam into a fixed insular, that's the end of the line for westward subduction, right? And I think generally that is the answer. I hadn't thought about it like that, Charlie, but I stalled for myself there for an extra 30 seconds so I could think about it. I think that is the argument. It's definitely eastward subduction today, is it not? Bijou, you want to get on camera? I think it is today. In fact, I know it is. This is Patrick's poster. We know that the ocean floor is subducting beneath North America eastward today. The question is, has it been subducting eastward beneath North America ever since the main event 100 million years? And now I'm having trouble because I'm thinking about a couple exceptions to that rule. So let me think more about that. On behalf of Bijou, I would like to do a toast to you and a toast to us. You're going to be cut out of the first stream that we did. You had good moments there. Did you know that? Did you know that you had good moments there? I even flipped them around. I had you on the magnified camera, at least your right ear. But now you're realizing that you want to be on camera again. Why would anybody still be watching if all we're doing is looking at a frickin' cat? All we're doing is looking at you. A toast to you. Here's to your health. Here's to the health of your parents and your grandparents. Here's to the health of your children and your grandchildren. Out you go. You can squeeze. And here's to all the valuable people working at all kinds of jobs, trying their best to keep us moving forward in this deeply confusing time that we're all living in on this planet. Here's to the change of the seasons. It's 4:18 p.m. and it's almost dark outside. Here in Ellensburg, Washington, latitude 47 degrees north. Toasting the what? That was the plan for today, which I never ended up showing you. And this is the plan for part 2 of our discussion. So if you had a Baja BC question, a burning question, and because of all my absent-mindedness and technology problems did not get to your question, I wholesomely and warmly invite you to join us for this show on Sunday morning. And I'll try to get to your questions then. Best I can do that. Thank you for joining us today. I love you. I love you. And we'll see you Sunday morning. Yep. Goodbye.